a minute. Okay. Claypool, you need anything else moved out of your way? Are you okay? Or?
I think I'm good, Your Honor. Thank you for asking.
Okay, you may proceed anytime you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. This case is 100% on the egregious misconduct of the Boynton Beach Police Department and how they used Dalia Dippolito as a pawn to generate good reality TV for the show Cops. Remember Detective Marino? Remember what he said? We're going to go through all the witnesses. But remember one fact that he said that just proved my point to you. This police department had no desire to seek justice, that they were in a frenzy to make sure to get Dalia Dippolito on tape so they could look like heroes on their YouTube channel. But let's get back to Marino. Remember what he said? Mohammed Shahadi told you 72 hours. Remember that? There was a 72-hour window. Shahadi told you that. Why is that important when you're back there deliberating? Because this police department was never interested in seeking justice. They were interested in escalating a situation that could have been easily taken care of by a phone call. Remember Shahadi? Remember that first phone call? He said, this is not that serious. Mr. Shahadi said, no crime has been committed. Mr. Shahadi said, don't think she's capable of doing anything. Mr. Shahadi said to the Boynton Beach Police Department, she was beaten by her husband. Mr. Shahadi said, this is a domestic abuse call. Just pick up the phone, give her a call, and take care of it. Do you remember that? That's how this reality TV started. Now, a good police department. You heard Tim Williams say, there's no better police officer in this country. 30-year veteran of the LAPD. He came out here to tell you that this was never a credible investigation. And what he told you today is that what a police department that's really seeking justice would have done was looked into the domestic abuse violation. Right? But that's not what happened here. Instead, you had a bunch of folks over at Boynton Beach Police Department ordering Mohammed Shahadi down there and laughing. How about that? In that first interview. And they didn't record that interview. How about that? Didn't record the interview. You want to know why they didn't record that first 2-hour interview? Because they were scripting what they needed to do for the Cops television show. That's why we don't have that recording. They were figuring out how do we plot this and generate this so that we can make a good episode for Cops. Remember 7 years later? This story doesn't start where Mr. Williams told you. He wants to have you look at the conclusion in this case. Those videos are the conclusion. If you're looking at this case as a book, those videos you just saw, those are the final chapter in the book. Mr. Williams does not want you to look at chapters 1 through 10. Remember when we selected you collectively as jurors in this case? You know how many jurors we got here? We picked you all, remember? We picked you because you made promises to us. One of the promises you made to us, and we trust that you're going to honor those promises. One of them was, remember when I got up and asked you? I said, is there anybody on this jury panel that's incapable of looking beyond words on video? You remember that? I asked all of you that. Everybody in this courtroom, all the prospective jurors. Are you able to put a videotape, words on a videotape, into proper context? And all of you agreed that you could. You made that promise to us. We are entrusting that you're going to follow through on that promise to us. Because you can't just take these contaminated videos that you just saw. You heard Tim Williams when he finished today. Remember what he said? Those videos are 2 words: contaminated, and they are tainted. That's what he told you. And you can't just look at them in a vacuum. You have to look at chapter 1 through 5. Let's say there's 5 chapters. But let me tell you where chapter 1 starts, because I got ahead of myself. I couldn't resist reminding all of you about the 72 hours that Marina talked about. But let's go back to chapter 1. It begins in September of 2008. Remember 7 days later? She's sending emails to the cops folks. Remember that? She sends one in September of 2008. She follows up in November of 2008. She follows up again in January of 2009. That's where this story starts. You have a police department already in a mindset that we want to get publicity. We want to look good. And we want to get on reality TV. You heard Mr. Williams tonight. He told you, and former Sergeant Frank Ramsey, he worked for the Boynton Beach Police Department for I think 20 years. He's not our guy. But we called him in, we subpoenaed him and brought him down here. Right? What did he tell you also? Cops shouldn't be filming, right? Because what it does is it makes people behave in a way that they ordinarily would not behave. Now you have to ask yourself when you're back there deliberating, is that acceptable? Is that acceptable police practices? Think about it. This case is way bigger than Dalia Dippolito. Rest assured. You have a great opportunity in this case to make a difference. Because this case is about holding law enforcement accountable, not only here, everywhere. Accountable for breaking the rules, lying, cheating, manipulating, deceiving, and then trying to benefit from it. Those videos, if you consider those videos, you know what you're doing? You are rewarding a police department for lying and cheating. Now, when you're deliberating, think about that for a minute. If you have children, think about how you handle your children. Do you customarily reward kids for lying and cheating? What kind of example does that set? What kind of precedent does that set for the future? So this case is way bigger. You all have a personal stake in this case. Now let's get back to how this first chapter started. You saw one of the emails from Stephanie Slater. Well, you heard, you read it. You'll have it back in the deliberation room. Read that email. Really important email. Because she talks about all the different types of crimes that have taken place at the Boynton Beach PD. Because she's trying to impress cops. We've got some juicy stuff. We've got some sexy cases. Because that's going to make good TV. Remember that question I asked her? I was kind of joking, but I really wasn't, I guess. Remember I said, hey, jaywalking case isn't going to look that good, is it? I was kind of trying to add some levity in the trial, but, you know, I went home after that trial, after that day in court, and I said, you know what? That really is the truth. Jaywalking's not going to work. They needed something sexy and salacious. And the minute we got that phone call then from Mohammed Shahadi, now we're fast forwarding to chapter 2. Chapter 1 is this police department was starved for fame and publicity. That's how this started. Chapter 2 is Mohammed Shahadi making a phone call. We've talked a little bit about that phone call already. Remember that phone call. Because in my opinion, you've got a couple really important facts to decide in this case. That's one of them. I think, if I'm sitting in your shoes, I think the two most important facts in this case are looking at that first phone call. What was this call really about? Go back there and talk about it. That's really, really important. It wasn't a murder for hire report. It was a domestic abuse report. And make a phone call and take care of it. That call is so critical. The second, I think, most important fact in this case that you're going to decide is, was Mohammed Shahadi threatened and coerced by the Boynton Beach Police Department to remain on this investigation? And I will tell you that you should decide, and you must decide that he was. Because if you weigh him against Detective Marino, there's two people, just to help you break it down. When you're back there, in order to decide that fact, you've got two people to speak to that issue. Marino, he says, I didn't threaten him. You've got Shahadi. What motive does he have to lie to you? Why is this guy going to come in here and tell you he was threatened? He doesn't want anything to do with this. And by the way, I forgot that fact. When he called, he said, I don't want to be involved. When they ordered him down to the police station, what did Shahadi say again? I don't want to be involved. What did Boynton Beach PD tell him? We're going to prosecute you unless you stay involved. Why did Boynton Beach PD tell him that? Because they were trying to make good TV for the cops. Sure. And they had 72 hours to do it. And this was their one shot to get it. So they broke the rules. They engaged in illegal acts. Did you hear the testimony in this case? Are you going to find Dalia Dippolito guilty? If you find her guilty, you are casting a vote for police corruption. You are casting a vote.
Sustained.
Let me read you a policy and procedure. And by the way, this is Exhibit 1. I implore you all, read Exhibit 1. Exhibit 1 is your Bible to get to a not guilty in this case. Exhibit 1 in this case is reasonable doubt. 5 times over. Mr. Williams wants you to think that those videos are reasonable, are guilt 5 times over. Exhibit 1 is, and I'm going to read you what I believe in this case to make it easy for you. This is the most important Boynton Beach directive. And by the way, you heard what a directive is. It's a rule you've got to follow. And Mr. Williams told you today, it doesn't matter if he's from California or Timbuktu, that the rules apply nationwide. And this is the rule that applies in this case. And it's page 3. All informants will be deactivated when he or she no longer has the potential or the ability to furnish information or services of use to the police department, when he or she is no longer willing to cooperate with the department. This, ladies and gentlemen, is reasonable doubt. This investigation ends. It ends at this moment in time. It's over because this policy procedure manages that Mohammed Shahadi be removed from this investigation. But instead, what the Boynton Beach Police Department did is they continue to pressure him. And how do we have proof of that? Well, let's talk about what Mr. Williams just told you. He showed you some phone records. We counted, by count, I believe we had at least 28 phone calls from Shahadi. during August 1st to August 4th. None of those phone calls were recorded. And those are uncontrolled phone calls. By that, I mean they are done outside the presence of the police officer. But you heard Tim Williams and you heard Frank Ramsey, former Sergeant Ramsey in this case. They both said, you've got to make sure those phone calls are recorded. And there are ways to do that. Key fobs, you remember that? Key fobs, digital recorder. It's pretty easy to do. But think about this. It's pretty easy to do for a police department that's seeking justice. It's not easy to do for a police department that's interested in generating good television. And that's why nothing was given to Shahadi at all to record those phone calls. Now those are uncontrolled phone calls. Okay? Now let's talk about something that's really, really, really important in this case. It's called controlled phone calls. Controlled phone calls. That's when Detective Marino has Shahadi come in to the police station. And he says, hey, call Dalia Dippolito. And by the way, the evidence in this case, overwhelming. Overwhelming reasonable doubt in this case, because almost every phone call made by Shahadi to Dippolito is initiated by the police department. You heard Tim Williams tell you that. The police department shouldn't be having Shahadi initiate phone calls, but they did. Now, did you pay attention to, I know it's hard because it's a long trial, but did you all pay attention to Shahadi when he said to you, could have been 20, 30, or more control phone calls in the police station? That's what he said. Now, we heard in this case, I believe 4, Mr. Williams played it for you, 4 of those phone calls. So when you're back there deliberating, ask yourself this. Where are the remaining 25 or more audio recordings of the phone calls between Mohammed Shahadi and Dalia? These are controlled phone calls. You heard Tim Williams tell you today, there is an affirmative duty and obligation of the Point Beach Police Department to secure audio recordings. Why? Because you want to eliminate any speculation, remember? You want to know the truth. Let me show you a postcard. This is to show you why it's so important to record all of the phone calls between the confidential informant and the suspect. This is why. Detective Marino helped prove reasonable doubt in this case. Remember what Detective Marino said? It is important, he's talking about Chili's audio here, but it applies to all recordings. It's important to record Chili's audio because it could have had no evidence. Remember that? No evidence. It could. What he's saying is, it could have contained information that exculpate. Exculpate means proves that Dalia Dippolito was backing out of this, that she was feeling some pressure, that she was not in a stable state of mind. This, ladies and gentlemen, is reasonable doubt. And this comes from Detective Marino. He helped prove our point. And that's what Tim Williams was talking about. But he's only talking about one audio. Do you know how many audio recordings we don't have in this case? We have the Chili's. We have 20, 30, or more controlled phone calls that we don't have audio recordings for. And then we have, by Mr. Williams' count with the phone records, at least another 20 phone calls, uncontrolled, that we do not have audio recordings for. Now let me read to you, just so you don't think I'm making this up. Let me read to you. This is an actual jury instruction. So this is the law that you're supposed to follow. A reasonable doubt as to the guilt of the defendant may arise from the evidence, conflict in the evidence, or the lack of evidence. Okay, the lack of evidence that constitutes reasonable doubt is just what Detective Marino was telling me about. It's the Chili incident. It's the other 30 or 40 phone calls that a credible police department should have maintained audio of so that we can know. You're not left to speculate. If you're left to speculate back in that deliberation room, then you must find reasonable doubt, and you must find Dalia Dippolito not guilty. Now let's go back to our story. We talked about chapter 1. We talked about the first phone call. Then Marino, remember Detective Marino, has Muhammad come down. He's threatening him. He's pressuring him. He then immediately calls Dalia Dippolito. Why is that important? Because he is initiating the phone calls. This is not Dalia Dippolito picking the phone up and saying, hey dude, what's going on? When are we going to kill Mike Dippolito? When are we going to do it? She wasn't initiating those phone calls. All those phone calls you heard are initiated by Muhammad Shahade because he is being pressured by this police department to be prosecuted. And that's why he's doing it. And then we see the tapes. Remember that other oath that you took for me when I was asking some questions? We talked about that you can't find guilt in this case because you don't like somebody. Remember that? I think I even tried to crack a little joke about the fact that I like to wear pocket squares. I don't know if you remember that, but I didn't want you to hold that against me. And you shouldn't. With the same token, you can't find guilt in this case because you don't like Dalia Dippolito. You don't like that she used foul language. You don't like that she seemed very erratic on those tapes. Because the reality is, you heard Shahade make that phone call about domestic abuse. So this is a woman, and you're the judge, look back. I mean, this is a woman who is not in a great frame of mind. And what does the police department do? Instead of reaching out to try to quell or stop something from happening, what they did is they got together, giggled over it, and put together their script and manufactured something much greater and much bigger than it actually was. That's the truth in this case. Shahade calls, and by the way, before we even get to Shahade calling Dippolito, did you remember what he said in there? He had Marino, did you hear? You remember? Marino's calling him at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. One of the instructions His Honor gave, you'll read one of the instructions. You know what one of his instructions is? Use your common sense when it comes to issues like that. Use your common sense. Why in the world do you think Marino, by the way, who lied to you and told you he left at 5 o'clock, remember that? Oh, I'm off at 5 o'clock. I'm off the clock. Remember that? Hey, Shahade's on his own. I didn't give him any digital recorder. Right? Remember that? He's off the clock. He's not paying attention. And he's not doing anything at all to ensure the integrity of this investigation. To the contrary, what he is doing, doesn't that sound to you? You all are smart. I trust you're smart. Doesn't that sound to you like somebody in a frenzy? Doesn't that sound to you like somebody with a 72-hour window of opportunity? Because remember about cops again. They're supposed to come on August 4th, but they're supposed to be in patrol cars. Remember that? That's important. Because that all got changed, remember? That got changed so they could film and do a staged crime scene. And they could be posted within a couple hours for the whole world to see. Remember that? That's another story. That's another chapter. But let's talk about that chapter now. Do you, in your heart of hearts, really believe that law enforcement in this country, or in Boynton Beach, focus on Boynton Beach, do you really believe that that is a police department looking to solve a crime or a potential crime? Or you're smart enough to know, call this police department out. Or is this really a police department in a quest for fame? You saw Stephanie Slater up there. You be the judge. Let's talk about Stephanie Slater for a minute. Take a look at that. Stephanie Slater, my question, why were you interested in having them come on to you, Ms. Slater? Because it's great publicity for the police department. Whenever you find out, let us know. The chief wants to have a big viewing party. So you've got a job back there in that deliberation room. Do you want to decide this case on contaminated videos? Or do you want to look at the truth? This is the truth of viewing party. Let's prey upon a woman who's in an unstable frame of mind, and I'll grant you that. Dalia Dippolito,
That's not evidence.
Overall.
Dalia Dippolito, I'm not here to tell you that she's a choir girl. Let's get that straight too. But that's not why you find guilty. But even if you don't like her or like what she said or how she said something, that is trumped by this. You should have been shocked when you heard that. A former chief of police, this man is more interested, and I didn't even put the right word on. Oh, I did, I'm sorry. A big viewing party. A big viewing party. Man, we gotta make some good reality TV. While I'm talking publicity, I found a good quote for you to think about when you're back there. Martin Luther King. He said, "He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it." So you got a big decision to make back there. Because this right here, that is evil. That is evil, what this police department is doing. So if you accept what Mr. Williams has told you, then you are cooperating with this evil, manipulative, corrupt, self-serving, fame-hungry police department. Think about that. That's why this case is so much bigger than Dalia Dippolito. And then I remember Ms. Slater, while we're on it, remember I even asked her? She's the same person who took videos. You saw the stage. They call it the staged crime scene video. I call it a fake crime scene video. How do you all feel about that today? This woman hasn't even been arrested. This police department has so many police officers out on a public street setting up a fake scene. 3 people filming it, lying to Ms. Dippolito about what's happening to get a good reaction from her, while a criminal investigation is pending. And then what do? Run on over to the police department within 2 hours. Boom! Hey world, we're the best police department on the planet. Forget about this young lady's constitutional rights. Forget about that. Let's go post it on social media. If that doesn't turn your stomach, in this case, nothing will. Nothing will. I'm telling you, that is flat out wrong. And that's reasonable doubt. That's reasonable doubt because that completely compromises the integrity of this investigation. How many people told you that in this case? Sergeant Ramsey? Tim Williams? Right? There will never be reasonable doubt if you don't find that this is reprehensible, intolerable, and is nothing close to serving and protecting a community. Let's talk a little bit about, you saw the video of the mobile gas station exchange between Mohammed Shahade and Dalia Dippolito. Now ask yourself this. If this police department firmly believed that Dalia Dippolito intended on having her husband killed, then why would they allow another 2 days to go by and then try to set her up on another videotape with Witty John? Why would they not put any surveillance on her? Think about that. If this, because the burden of proof is on the state, remember, they've got to prove, let me read it to you. They have to prove the third element. The third element on criminal solicitation, Dalia Dippolito had the intent that Witty Jean commit the crime. Remember what I said in opening statement? I said, in order to determine whether Dalia had intent to commit this crime, look no further. Remember what I said? Look no further than the egregious misconduct of the Boynton Beach Police Department. You ever heard that phrase, coming out of the horse's mouth, or look to the horse's mouth? The horse's mouth here is the Boynton Beach Police Department. That's what you got to look to. And I can't think of a more compelling fact in this case than a police department who wants you to believe that this woman wants her husband killed, and they want you to send her away for 20 years.
Objection.
And yet,
Sustained.
Strike.
Sustained.
and yet, they do nothing to place surveillance on her. And why is that important? Mr. Williams got up and he tried to rehabilitate a witness. He's like, well, you don't need to put surveillance on her because she's hiring our guy to do it. But he's missing one thing. If this police department really, truly believed that Dalia Dippolito intended on killing her husband, and she was dead set on doing it, what's to stop her from getting on the phone and calling somebody else within that 48 hours or 72 hours? Right? Think about that one. They didn't even bother to follow this woman. They knew, the Boynton Beach Police Department knew that they were making good TV. They never took Dalia Dippolito serious. They never did. Because you remember that common sense instruction. Use your common sense on that one. You mean to tell me when the lights are out and this case is over and you're done and you make a judgment in this case and you're thinking a couple years down the road about what you did in this case, you need to ask yourself whether you really believe that a police department thinks that somebody's going to kill somebody. And on August 1st, they go and get a good tape of her at the mobile gas station. And 2 more days go by, and I don't even know if they knew her last name by then. And they don't put any surveillance on her, and they don't contact Mike Dippolito. Don't you think that's a really important fact in this case? You want to get to the truth of the matter in this case? Look at the egregious misconduct of the police department. You know as well as I do. I trust all of you. I know that you know that any credible police department who's really seeking the truth, who really thinks that this woman's going to put, as Mr. Williams said, 2 bullets in his head, that they're going to call Mike Dippolito. Don't you think they should have sent some protection over to him? Don't you think they should have done the obvious and put some surveillance on Dalia Dippolito? Do you believe this farce that the state is presenting you with? Do you really think that police department thought this young woman was going to kill her husband? Well, if they believe that Dalia Dippolito intended to have Winnie Jean kill her husband, they would have had 24/7 surveillance on her, and they would have had 24/7 surveillance on Mike Dippolito. But they let her go home. And they let her go home without any surveillance because they were making good TV. They had no interest in solving a crime. They were manufacturing a crime. And that's reasonable doubt. If you find in this case, which you should, that this misconduct by this police department is reprehensible and egregious, that, ladies and gentlemen, is reasonable doubt in this case. It gets even worse. You think that's bad? Mr. Williams played the Winnie Jean tape, right? Let's talk about that tape a little bit now. He played that tape for you. You heard me ask Mr. Winnie Jean, nice man. I thought he was a nice young man. And to his credit, he got called in this last minute. Did you hear that? Let's get back to that 72 hours, right? Can you imagine an undercover investigation? Hey, Winnie Jean, go on over to CVS Pharmacy and go talk to this woman and get her on tape. Did you hear the questions I asked him? Hey, Mr. Jean, did you talk to Mohammed Shahadeh? He didn't even know Mohammed Shahadeh was the confidential informant. Doesn't that trouble you? Doesn't that turn your stomach a little bit? Don't you think it's not his fault? It's the Boynton Beach Police Department's fault. Because they were in a rush. We got 72 hours. Let's get this good piece for TV. Let's get Winnie Jean over there. Let's not even tell him who Mohammed Shahadeh is. He thought Mohammed Shahadeh was Dalia Dippolito's cousin. He doesn't even know that Dalia Dippolito meets with Mohammed Shahadeh at the Chili's restaurant. How about that? What does that tell you? Does that tell you that this is a police department determined to get to the truth and prevent a crime? Or does that tell you this is a police department that wants fame, fortune, and they're manufacturing a crime? Which one does that tell you? I'm not even going to give you the answer because you know what the answer is. But let's get back to that. Remember that question I asked Winnie Jean? Hey, after all that on the videotape, did you arrest Dalia Dippolito? What was his answer? One word, no. No. That gets back to the intent. That proves my point again. This police department never ever thought she intended on killing her husband because they would have arrested her on the spot. They didn't do that. You know what they did? Instead, they let her take the food she ordered. They want you to believe she was going to kill. You believe that for a second? Do you? Do you really believe that? Does that sound to you like a police department that believes this woman's going to kill her husband? Hey, you ordered him some food, let her take him. What if she changed her mind? What if on the way home she says, I don't like Winnie Jean. I'm going to call Joe Blow somewhere else and have him kill my husband. Right? What if she had done that? Well, the fact that this police department did nothing from that August 3rd video to August 4th proves, we don't even have to prove anything in this case, yet we have proved for you that that's reasonable doubt. We proved it for you. That's not even my job. Let's talk about August 4th now. Let's keep moving along with the chapters here. August 4th now. What happens on August 4th? Remember I asked Winnie Jean an important question. I said, hey, from the time you left the August 3rd encounter with Dalia at the mobile station, I'm sorry, at the CVS, at the time, from the time you left to the afternoon of August 4th, did Dalia Dippolito call you? What was his answer? No. No. Very important fact for you all to remember back there. Little facts here and there that when they all come together, they connect. That's another really, really important fact. She's not initiating this. And she never, by the way, backtracking to August 1, she didn't make a single phone call to Mohammed, did she? You want to look at intent? She didn't call Mohammed up and said, hey, dude, meet me over at Starbucks. Let's figure out a way to kill Mike Dippolito. Have you heard 1 ounce of evidence in this case of that? Have you? Think about it. No, zero. Same thing with Whitty John. After that August 3rd meeting, no phone call from Dalia Dippolito. In fact, did you hear an important comment that she made in one of these tapes? There's a really, really important comment she makes in here. She says to Whitty John, and he's calling her the next day, remember? And she says, "You caught me off guard today." That's another really, really important fact. Caught me off guard today. Translation. You know what that tells me? This is a woman who doesn't want to have her husband killed. She might be a talker. Remember, actions speak louder than words. We've all said things that we don't mean. Caught me off guard. You know what a response would have been from a woman who wants to kill her husband? Wouldn't have been, "Caught me off guard." It would have been, "How fast can you get here?" Right? Think about that. Caught me off guard versus, "Hey, how fast can you get here, dude? I can't wait to knock this guy off." You didn't hear that. Caught me off guard. I heard her say even to Muhammad Shahadi a couple times. "Well, what do I do now?" I heard that. That sounds to me like a woman who's not in a real great place or a great state of mind, who maybe needs some help. But what happens after that Whitty John account? And before I move on to August 4th, let's focus on Whitty John. And I'm sorry I'm going all over the place, but now we're on August 3rd again, remember? Let's talk about what happened with Whitty John. Whitty John, just like Detective Marino, helps us prove reasonable doubt. He helped prove it. Take a moment, take a look at that. Whitty John initiates a phone call to Dalia Dippolito. And you know what he said to her? He said two really important pieces of information. He said, "Bring your key to the house and bring your $3,000. What did you learn in this case with the Whitty John count? You learned that Dalia Dippolito did not bring the key to the house. You learned that Dalia Dippolito didn't bring $3,000. That is monumental. That is reasonable doubt beyond belief. That proves there's no intent. But don't listen to me. Forget about me. Listen to their witness. This is exactly what he said in this case. "I asked for the $3,000 to prove payment, and for the key," these are his words, ladies and gentlemen, the case is over right here, "and for the key to show intent." Remember intent? Intent is right here. Number 3, take a look at that again. And what is his answer? No keys means no intent to commit the crime. This case is over. If you don't believe me that the case was over after the 40 or so phone calls that weren't recorded, after the Chili's encounter that we don't have the tape of, if you don't think that is enough reasonable doubt, that is a mountain of reasonable doubt. But if you are still in doubt about reasonable doubt, this solves the puzzle for you. Their own witness. Read it again. No keys means no intent to commit the crime. And you know what the reality of this is? Whitty John's telling you at the end of that day, on August 3rd, there was no deal to kill her. There's nothing in place to kill her husband. He was initiating everything. And guess what? He then had to make that call, remember? He had to call Dalia Dippolito the next day because she hadn't brought any money and she hadn't brought the key, hadn't given him the alarm code system. She was caught off guard that he even had her address. Remember he said, "Well, I went out and found out you live on such and such street." She wasn't providing it. And did you notice her demeanor with Shahade, who she's known 9 years, had an intimate relationship? I heard them say on there, I was a little surprised too, "I love you, I love you." Obviously, they're still close, right? Did you notice the demeanor with him? And he's not the hit guy, remember. You've got to decide on Willie Jean, whether Dalia intended to have Willie Jean kill her husband, not Muhammad. That's a really important distinction too, because she feels more at liberty to have this colloquy and discussion with Muhammad Shahade the way you saw it, because she's known him 9 years. But guess what? She then is talking to the guy who's supposed to do it, and how does her demeanor change? It changes pretty dramatically. You're not hearing all that discussion again. You're not seeing a key, and you're not seeing $3,000. And how about another fact we forgot about? Do you remember I asked that question in the timeline? Remember I asked Willie Jean? I said, you called her at 2 o'clock, remember? And you said, hey, meet me in an hour. Be there in an hour. Remember I established that? And she didn't even get there until like 5:45 or so. 3 hours and 45 minutes later. Now you tell me, if that's a woman dead set on putting 2 bullets in her husband's head, you don't think she would have been there as quickly as possible? 3 hours and 45 minutes go by. And you want to know what the Boynton Beach PD is doing? They're starting to sweat. They're sweating a little bit because their script is falling apart. That's what's happening. It's falling apart. Why do you think they propagated a lie in this case? We believe the evidence is shown in this case. Remember we were talking about this alleged malfunction? Remember the Chili's encounter? And we had Captain Bonnefaire come in and say, oh, I heard a day later the wire at Chili's malfunctioned. We heard former Sergeant Frank Ramsey say, oh, yeah, I heard it malfunctioned. Remember that? The state presented with you with 0 evidence of a malfunction. There is no evidence of a malfunction of that wire at Chili's. You want to know why? Because there never was a malfunction, because this police department lied.
Facts on evidence.
And the evidence in this case, the truth came out with Mr. Shahade. Remember when Mr. Shahade, and I didn't even ask him a direct question. He voluntarily told you. He voluntarily told you the following about that Chili's encounter. He said, when I came out of the Chili's restaurant, I saw a couple Boynton Beach police officers. Remember this? And they told him, they were laughing, and they told him something to the effect that, oh, Dalia just ordered the Last Supper. Remember that? And I even asked him, I said, did, because you also heard in this case that there was nobody else from the Boynton Beach Police Department inside that Chili's restaurant. None. Why is that important? Because it proves our point that the audio recording didn't work. Because these police officers out in the parking lot knew exactly what was being talked about. Now ask yourself this. That occurred just before Dippolito goes. And she's driven by Muhammad Shahade, by the way. And he even says in one of those tapes, you heard it, he said it. He goes, oh, I'll drive you over. I don't want you to go alone. Remember that? Another important piece of information for you to put this puzzle together. Really important. Because he needs to make sure at this point, Boynton Beach PD is threatening to prosecute him. He needs to make sure that he gets Dippolito over to the CVS. He's in a 45-minute discussion with her. We'll never know now what's discussed. The police department says a malfunction, but Shahade tells you it was recorded. We don't have that recording. Absent that recording, you heard Tim Williams say reasonable doubt. That's reasonable doubt. The Chili's incident is compelling. Because if this police department wanted you to know the truth, we have that. We don't have it. What can you deduce from that? What do you think? Why do you think that there is no audio from that Chili's? And that's the moments before Dalia Dippolito goes over and meets with Willie Jean. That's the best evidence. Tim Williams told you that. He told, you know what he told you? He told you all phone calls, all encounters must be recorded. This case is about integrity, ladies and gentlemen. This case, I can sum this case up for you in 3 words. 3 words to summarize this case. It's not the videos. 3 words. Abuse of power. That's what this case is about. Now ask yourself this. After that encounter with Witty Jean, where he even says to you that there's no intent, what does the Boynton Beach Police Department do? We're almost getting to the conclusion of this case. What does the Boynton Beach Police Department do at that point? They don't put out any surveillance. They don't contact on Dalia. They don't contact Mike Dippolito. Instead, they go back to the police department, and you know what they're doing? They're plotting how to set up a fake crime scene. About that. Does that tell you all folks that this is a police department that really believes she's going to do something bad? They were setting up a fake crime scene for the next day. And you heard Stephanie Slater talk about it. All the police officers over there spending their time setting up a fake crime scene. And then she takes the video. I don't know who posted it, but it's posted. Did you hear another fact that was important about these videos? Did you hear Mr. Shahade when he told you that he was told when he signed that confidential informant packet that he would remain anonymous? Remember that? Detective Marino lied about that. And did you hear how Shahade found out that he was no longer anonymous? Do you remember what he said? For YouTube. For YouTube. While I'm on the subject, Detective Marino, let's talk about Detective Marino. Because your job in this case again is you've got to weigh Detective Marino with Muhammad Shahade. You got to measure those 2 guys up. And I will tell you, this is no contest. No contest whatsoever. Because His Honor gave you instruction that you're supposed to weigh the credibility of witnesses in this case. And one of the factors you look at is whether they gave inconsistent testimony from another proceeding under oath. That's one of the factors you look at. And you cannot trust Detective Marino. And I'll tell you why, right here. Remember I asked, here's the first lie by Detective Marino. I asked him on examination, could you have provided Muhammad Shahade with a recorder? Remember that? To ensure the integrity of the investigation. To ensure that all the phone calls were recorded. Do you remember what he told you? He danced around my question for about 5 minutes. And he told you all, no, there's nothing else I could give him. Well, I had a digital recorder. Remember this? I had a digital recorder, but I couldn't give him my digital recorder. Remember all that? I leave at 5. Sergeant Ramsey said everybody was working around the clock. Marino told, that's the 3rd lie, by the way. It's not even on there. 3rd lie is, Marino told you, I leave at 5. Ramsey's like, everybody's working around the clock. Why are they all working around the clock? Because they got a 72-hour window to get a good episode of Cops. Now let's get back to the Marino lies. He didn't tell you the truth. I pulled it out of him. I testified from February 23rd, 2016. These are his words, not mine. This is their guy, their top witness by Mr. Williams. He tells you, yeah, we could have provided him with a recorder. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, reasonable doubt number 30, right here. Right here. We could have provided him with a recorder. He said it under oath. You want to know why he didn't provide him with a recorder? Because he knew that he was pressuring Shahade and threatening Shahade with prosecution to get Dippolito on tape, and he didn't want to hear anything that Dalia Dippolito would say on that tape because it would kill the script. It might indicate that she doesn't want to go through with this. It might indicate that she's caught off guard. They didn't want that information. So the one thing that Marino could have done to ensure the integrity of this investigation, he lied to you about it. He could have easily done it. And you heard Captain Bonifair. What did Bonifair tell you? Short witness, he told you 2 things. Oh yeah, key fobs and digital recorders. Easy. Easy to do that. But Marino lied to you about that. He said, I didn't get my digital recorder. Now what about the confidential informant packet? Did you spend a lot of time discussing the CI packet with Shahade? The original, the first time when we got involved, yes. And then testimony, that was prior testimony under oath, ladies and gentlemen. The original, the first time when we got involved, yes. He said yes, under oath. You know what an oath means? Let's talk real quick about that before I finish. An oath means you swear to tell the truth. It's perjury. If you lie, it's a crime. And then what did he say here? Testimony from the trial. Ace Brown signed off on Muhammad Shahade as confidential informant and reviewed the packet. He denied. He lied to you again. He lied to you 3 times. So when you're back there deliberating and you've got to weigh these 2 witnesses, Shahade versus Marino, this is a no-brainer for you because this young man, Detective Marino, has never told you the truth and you cannot trust him. And you should trust Mr. Shahade, who has 0 reason to lie. Another instruction His Honor gave you in the jury instructions, you look at whether a witness has an interest in the case. That's another important fact. Marino works for the police department. He still works for Boynton Beach PD. He was featured in the Cops episode. He has a motive to lie to you because he still works for the police department. What motive does Shahade have to tell you? What motive would he have to tell you? That he was pressured and coerced to remain on this investigation. He has no motive. 0 motive. He didn't want to be involved. Why would he make that happen? Almost there. I want to go through some of the violations. These are violations of the Boynton Beach Police Department policies. So again, I'm not making this up. I don't make the rules. The Boynton Beach Police Department, they made their rules. You heard the testimony in this case. These are called directives. They are policies and procedures that this police department has to follow. This isn't some kind of board game. We're playing Clue at the house and having fun. Even though we saw a couple witnesses in this case laughing. You saw Ms. Slater laughing, right? You saw Ms. Marino smirking a couple times. Remember, I had to remind them how serious it is. This isn't some kind of board game, right? These are rules that you have to follow. If you are going to conduct an investigation with integrity, and if you don't have integrity, you have reasonable doubt in this case. If you find, which you should, that this police misconduct was so egregious and reprehensible that it undermined the complete investigation, then you've got reasonable doubt. But let's go through the violations real quick, and then I'll get you out. Violation 1. I've read that one to you. Mr. Shahade said point blank, how many times did he tell you on the stand? I gave him every opportunity to tell me, no, this isn't true. He told you how many times. I was threatened, coerced, Marino was calling me 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Remember that other testimony you heard too? Marino called him when he was working. He's trying to run a business. Hey, get down here. Come down here to the police station. Remember? Order him down to the police station. That's threatening and coercing. Okay, that is a violation of the July 23rd, 2007. I've already read that one to you. He should have been removed from the investigation, and it ends. Their little script is over. And what they should have done, according to Tim Williams, who created the domestic abuse program for the LAPD, he told you what they should have done. If this had been a credible police department, they would have investigated the victim of the domestic abuse as well. Remember getting back to that first phone call? How important that first phone call. If you're in any doubt back there about what I'm telling you today, think back to that first phone call. That gives you the roadmap to reasonable doubt. Violation number 2. This is Muhammad Shahade's testimony. This is critical again. He says a lot of calls were made while in the presence of the Boynton Beach Police Department. He says 10, 20, 30 maybe. Remember that? That's in the presence. We've heard 4 of those. That means if there's 20, we're missing 16. That's 16 reasonable doubts. You only need 1 to win this case. That's 16. If there's 30 phone calls, if 30 phone calls were made, controlled phone calls, you heard 4 recorded phone calls in this case, that leaves 26 reasons, 26, ladies and gentlemen, why you should find reasonable doubt in this case. And please take serious how important it is to have these phone calls recorded. That's at the core of any credible investigation. I'm not making this up. Forget about Tim Williams for a minute. These are their own rules. All their witnesses said the same thing. Rand said, even Marina, yeah, we should record phone calls. Only 4 calls recorded. Violation 3. Shahadi told Point Beach Police Department didn't want to wear a wire. I was told I had to. I didn't have a choice. I was told I could get prosecuted. Remember that confidential informant packet? Take a look at that back there. That's Exhibit 3. Exhibit 3, I believe it's paragraph 15. Take a look at that. It says that a confidential informant is supposed to be delivering services free of any undue coercion or threats. It says it right in their own CI packet. This is their own rules, ladies and gentlemen, that they have repeatedly violated. Here it is right here. I didn't even see that, paragraph 15. I agree to cooperate with the police department on my own free will and not as a result of threats and intimidation. What more do you need, ladies and gentlemen? You only need 1 reasonable doubt. Here is another. This is their own language, and they've completely violated that. Shahadi told you it took maybe 2 minutes. Remember that? 2 minutes to go through the confidential informant packet because they had that 72 hours. Remember? More evidence, Point Beach Police Department's egregious misconduct. Shahadi reports that Dippolito is in an abusive relationship and doesn't believe that Dippolito was a threat. Point Beach Police Department installed cameras in Shahadi's vehicle without his consent. And before Shahadi even gave a formal statement, didn't that trouble you a little bit? How did you all feel about that? Within 5 minutes of Shahadi being in that police station, you remember that? They took his keys and they lied to him and said, oh, we're going to go move your car, put it in a different part of the parking lot. And instead, they installed video cameras in his car without even having taken a statement from him. Ding, 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 red light going off in your head. What does that tell you? They had scripted this from the get-go. They hadn't even spoken to this guy in person, and they were installing videos in his car already. Do you think that's good police practices? Do you think that's a credible investigation? Do you think that's an investigation filled with integrity? Or do you think that is a police department who has already made a decision that they are going to manufacture a crime to make some good television? I trust all of you. You're going to make the right decision on this. Point Beach PD lied to Shahadi, coerced him to sign the confidential informant packet. We've already talked about that. We told you they lied to him. Who do you believe? Do you believe Shahadi? Or do you believe Marina, who's lied to you 3 times already? You make the call. Shahadi tells Point Beach PD multiple times did not want to be involved in the investigation, threatened with prosecution. We've already gone through that. They can't do that. Remember that? Illegal. Illegal. At least 2 witnesses have told you that's illegal. So if the Point Beach Police Department engages in illegal conduct, do you know what those videotapes are that Mr. Williams is relying upon? That's his whole case. That means that those videos are poisonous. They're fruit of the poisonous tree. That's what they are. Because they are a result of illegal conduct. And if you find Dalia Dippolito guilty, you are endorsing illegal conduct of a police department. You're saying that it's okay to lie and cheat. There was a 3-hour discussion that was not recorded between Shahade and Boynton Beach PD. We already talked about that. The reason they did that is because they heard everything he had to say, and then they waited, and then they put together their script for the Cops TV show. And then that's when they pushed the reporter. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, remember they were laughing at her Shahade. They were laughing before they even hit the recorder. Remember that? They're giggling. So, do you think that that sounds like police officers that really think this woman's going to kill her husband? They're laughing about it? You make the call on that? Now that's before the investigation starts. Then, during the investigation, Boynton Beach PD does not remove the confidential informant Shahade from the investigation, even though their policy says you will. Remember, will. Just to be clear, will means it's mandatory. There's no debating this. It's not could. It's not maybe. It's will. Investigation over. It's over when Shahade says, I don't want to be involved. It's over. Why? You heard Williams. No integrity. It's done. Over. You're going to rely on this? Shahade was not monitored or supervised during the meeting and Chili's. We've already talked about that. I've already gone through that with how important it was to record that. We believe the evidence in this case shows it was recorded. We don't have the recording. What inference do you draw from that? I'll leave that to you. Several phone calls made outside the presence of Boynton Beach PD between Shahade and Dippolito. We've gone through all that. And we've gone through Ms. Slater posting surveillance videos. We're instructing folks at Boynton Beach PD to post them on YouTube. And, and Sergeant Sheridan. We forgot to talk about Sheridan. Remember that comment that Sergeant Frank Ramsey told you about? He said, Ramsey, by the way, was the guy most qualified. Did you know that? This guy, 20-year veteran, he was the guy most qualified to do this investigation. Do you know why they didn't pick him? Do you know why Sheridan, who we didn't hear from, by the way, we didn't hear any testimony from Sheridan. He's the lead guy in the case, too. Do you know why Sheridan didn't pick Ramsey? Because Ramsey's honorable. Because Ramsey plays by the rules. Ramsey follows the rules. You know what he did? He went and picked the younger Marino. Marino's the guy that wants to, work his way up the department. Marino was involved in the investigation. But remember what Sheridan did. Sheridan told you, under no circumstances, should that Chili's encounter ever have not been recorded. And he went to Sheridan. Remember that? Ramsey goes to Sheridan and says, hey, look, I heard that there's a malfunction. No evidence of it, he heard it. I heard that there's a malfunction. We should not go forward with having Muhammad Shahade go into Chili's with Dalia Dippolito. Let me go get, remember this? Let me go get another wire. I can go to Delray Beach, get another wire. Remember that? I can get it. Frankly. Remember what Sheridan said? And excuse me for cursing, but I'm going to tell you what he said. It's my fucking investigation. Now, you again tell me, does that sound like a sergeant? Does that sound like a sergeant from a police department that is out there trying to get to the bottom of a potential crime? Or does that sound like a sergeant that has to meet that 72-hour deadline for Cops TV? Does that sound like a sergeant who's more interested in having integrity in the investigation? Or does that sound to you like a sergeant who wants to make sure that Chief Imler has fun at the big viewing party? Remember that? Sheridan wants to make sure that that viewing party's a hit. It ain't going to be a hit without Dippolito. Why do you think he would be that angry? You're smart enough. Use your common sense on that one. That speaks volumes. That's reasonable doubt as well. That's the lead sergeant on this case, putting his self-interest above the constitutional rights of the suspect. That's what that is. Almost done, Your Honor. minutes. Take a look at another one. Remember Frank Ramsey again? Cops television shows influence over the Dippolito investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard from Ramsey and Sam Williams. These guys told you point blank, categorically, two good police officers, and they told you, I think, and flat out told you, cops should not have been a part of this investigation. Should not have been part of this investigation. In fact, they were down at the police station. Did you hear that? They were down at the police. There was testimony in this case. Can you imagine when you go home tonight and you're thinking about this case? Think about it. Is this reality? Is this reality or reality TV? That's what you got to ask yourself. Because if you think that's reality, then law enforcement's in trouble. They should never have had the cops TV show down at the police station. They haven't. Did you hear, I think Ramsey even told you, he said he even felt like some people were acting differently. Remember? They might have been acting differently because the cameras were there. The cop show was filming. They shouldn't have been. But remember what Ramsey said. And this is reasonable doubt. This is another reasonable doubt. We only need one, and I've told you about at least 30 instances of reasonable doubt. He says you having cops there changed the direction of the investigation. It was a distraction. It changed the direction of the investigation. Do you know what he means by that? Translation. It completely gutted this investigation of any integrity. What Ramsey meant, it completely compromised this investigation. This is their own guy. This is the guy that should have been on the investigation. Because you want to know something? You remember what he told you? He told you. He would have removed Mohammed Shahade from this investigation. Frank Ramsey told you that. Their guy, 20 years on the force. He told you. Because he was a good police officer in that police department. And guess what? He was told to F off by the lead sergeant. We've already talked about this reasonable doubt again. The Chili's audio tape, the numerous controlled phone calls and uncontrolled phone calls that were not recorded. That's a real problem. And I've already read to you the instruction on that. That, ladies and gentlemen, let's make this clear. There is no doubt that the law that you're going to receive from his honor states that that is reasonable doubt. The failure to have evidence, the lack of evidence. Ask yourself this in your mind. What is the best evidence? Think about this. Think about it this way. If you're still struggling with this, which you shouldn't be, think about this. What's the best evidence of what Dalia Dippolito and Mohammed Shahade were talking about during all those phone encounters and during that meeting? What's the best evidence? Is it him? Is it her? Is it the tape? It's the audio tape. I know you know that. That is the best and most compelling evidence. And that's why in the state of Florida, it's reasonable doubt. When you don't have the audio evidence that you should, as the police department, generate, retain, and preserve, and turn it over. And you even heard Tim Williams. Remember Tim Williams, what he told you? He said from day one, the state attorney should have been involved in this case. Did you hear him say that? No evidence in this case at all that the state presented that the state attorney was involved in this case. And you want to know why the state attorney wasn't involved in this case? It's pretty simple. I think you all know the answer to that. They couldn't have their big viewing party with Chief Imler. Right? They couldn't have it. Because they couldn't have generated, they couldn't have manufactured this alleged crime anymore. Couldn't have done it. I'm going to leave you with one more One more quote. And this again is from Martin Luther King. May I stress the need for leaders of sound integrity. Leaders not in love with publicity, but in love with justice. Think about that. That couldn't have been more on point in this case. This was a police department in love with publicity. And by virtue of that, they tossed Dalia Dippolito under the bus. They made this way more than it ever was. And they could care less about her constitutional rights. They were only worried about that big viewing party. Ladies and gentlemen, you must find Dalia Dippolito not guilty in this case. There is mountains of reasonable doubt in this case. Allow her, give her that freedom back to go home to her family and her infant son. On behalf of his honor and the state, Mr. Williams and Ms. Lardy and Mr. Rosenfeld and myself, we want to all collectively thank you for the time that you've given us and dedicated in this case. We deeply appreciate it. You won't be hearing from me again. You'll be hearing from Mr. Williams in the morning, but I trust when you're back there, you're going to do the right thing, and you're going to use your common sense on this one. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Claypool.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, still you're looking at me like you want to do something. We're going to do that in the morning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and conclude for this evening. It's already 20 minutes after 6. As I indicated, that we were going to split this up a little bit, finish the closings in the morning. I'm going to ask you to be back at 9:30. I'm going to try to get through my morning docket just as quick as I can. So if you made any notes on your jury instructions, just make sure you keep those jury instructions with your notepad, because to the extent you have any notes that you've made, which is fine if you wish, those notes are also privileged, and so those are going to be locked up overnight, so no one has the opportunity to see any notes you may have written on your jury instructions. So we're going to let you go for this evening. We're going to ask you to be back at 9:30 tomorrow. 9:30 tomorrow we'll have the rebuttal closing, and then I'll send you back to deliberate. Reminder of what you already know. You cannot discuss this case, even amongst yourselves yet, until I send you back to begin deliberating. You cannot do any research. You cannot listen to or read news accounts of the trial. Please have a safe drive home. Pleasant evening. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning. You may be seated. Ms. Lawyer, I assumed we had agreed that Mr. Claypool had indicated he doesn't care after he wanted to get his closing in and he did the rebuttal in the morning. I don't want to try to send him back for your deliberations at this point. It's just too late. I don't want to rush further. And so what we'll do is we'll have the rebuttal. I don't know how much time you have left. I'm sure Bree does. Okay, so you have to just understand you've got 32 minutes left of that total time for rebuttal. So we'll have a rebuttal tomorrow. I'll give them their final instructions and we'll send them back to deliberate. Okay, I do need to close the courtroom down, so anything that we need to do this evening before we recess? Defense, we okay for the evening? Okay, all right. Okay, we're in recess until tomorrow morning at 9:30.